Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us over here. I know it's always a very quick transition from our final plenary over to this closing session. And so will you join me in one more round of virtual applause and written gratitude in the chat for Joy, Monique, Sharon, Earthia, and Tracy. They brought their all to this and we are so grateful and inspired. So thank you. And Joy, thank you again for your leadership with pulling the final plenary together. So this will be the 46th year that the director of the Natural Hazards Center has issued a summary, a wrap-up, and a call to action at the close of this annual workshop. What this means in practice is that in order to get a sense of the meeting, I split my time evenly between every session. Then on this Wednesday morning, I wake when the sun has not yet graced the sky in order to write this closing. You all are like fuel poured into an empty gasoline tank. Before proceeding with this closing summary, I want to offer a thanks to all of the participants who took part this year and a special thanks to the people who helped to make this workshop possible. To the 10 student volunteers who gave so much in each session, you have our gratitude and our respect. Thank you for showing up and helping to keep all of us together and running on time. Melissa and Jocelyn, thank you for leading and coordinating the volunteers with your usual thoughtfulness and care. For the past 11 months, under the most able and capable and extraordinary guidance of Jennifer Tobin, the Natural Hazards Center team has been planning and weaving together this workshop. Jennifer has worked alongside our core team of Jolie Breeden, Katie Murphy, Jeffrey Gunderson, Jason Van Horn, Megan Costa, Luther Green, Robin Albright, and Terry McKenzie to make this experience all that it has been. We also owe a special thanks to the researchers and students at the center. Nania, Jessica, Heather, Candace, Melissa, Jocelyn, Rachel, Courtney, Zoe, Sage, Charlie, Neva, and Amina all stepped in and stepped up in the months leading up to this meeting to get things done. We are so grateful, and I am reminded every day of what a gift it is to work with such kind and dedicated people. If you are so moved, will you please offer a word of gratitude for the Natural Hazards Center team in the chat box now? Thank you. On the opening day of this workshop, we ask all of you to share one big challenge the hazards and disaster workforce is facing and one big change you want to see. The magnificently talented Elise Bernbach took your insights and turned them into this vision mural for 2021. We will be sharing this far and wide with all of you, thanks to Heather. And thank you, Elise, and thank you for all of your contributions throughout this workshop to capture the recording so beautifully, and to all the participants who contributed your ideas to this mural. Thank you so much. This is your mural. Closing. Visionaries. Visionaries. Wherever you are in the world, will you say that word with me one time? Visionaries. Visionaries are people with original ideas about what the future could be like. Visionaries are people, as Rinpui Lao said yesterday, who, quote, become aware of risks and then start thinking about solutions. Visionaries, that is who you are. You look out at the world and you see it in all of its complexity, its unpredictability, its inequality, its tragedy. But you also see its possibility because you see the possibility in people. That is why this community is visionary. For over 4 decades at this meeting, We have mostly looked outward. We've assessed programs, policies, places, people. But this year, in our 46th year, we turn that mirror on ourselves, not in a self-serving way, but in a self-reflective way. We are only 2 decades into this century, and we've got almost 80 years to go. Are we ready for what is coming? Do we have the people that we need to respond to the power imbalances and the political and economic injustices that are placing this planet in further peril? After listening to all of you this week, listening to the visionaries out there, I feel more reassured than ever that we can do this together. Here are 5 big lessons that you generated this week about what our hazards and disaster workforce needs to confront rising 21st century challenges. Number 1, Envision. Even as the demands and pressures of today mount, we need to continue to carve out the time and space to envision a different future, one that is more just, equitable, and sustainable, one that puts science and morality on the same plane and sees them as inseparable, one where we recognize and live with the recognition that none of us are safe until we are all safe. Yesterday morning, a global team of visionary practitioners from Geohazards International, or GHI, shared a set of key principles for how we can work with underserved communities at extreme risk to disaster to envision a different future. When GHI works in a community, they stand beside the local leaders as they stand before some of the world's most vulnerable structures. They look to the left and they see one vision, one future, where the school that they are assessing collapses into rubble in an earthquake, killing every child and teacher inside. But then they look to the right and they work closely and respectfully to figure out how to relocate, rebuild, or retrofit that building to save lives and to ensure that the heart of the community remains intact, even when disaster strikes. Number 2, Uplift. To envision a different future is vital and necessary work. But as Dante Council of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta underscored, this work can be mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausting. And as medical doctor Tom Kirsch gravely reminded us, the work can also be deadly. He estimates that perhaps as many as 10,000 frontline healthcare workers in the US have died since the pandemic began, representing what he argued is likely the greatest healthcare workforce tragedy in our national history. He challenged us to consider who will protect, support, and uplift those workers. If not us, then who? It is clear that the members of this community are taking responsibility for identifying our gaps, our weaknesses, and our missing pieces and people so we can do better, so we can support and uplift one another. Yesterday morning, during the Gender and Disasters Roundtable, Alice Fothergill of the University of Vermont shared a moving story about why the Roundtable was established here at the workshop 24 years ago. That group started meeting here because a number of visionaries, Barb Vogt, Chris Peterson, Dick Krajewski, Bill Anderson, and others, recognized that there were far too few women in this field, and they needed to create a space to uplift and advance gender in this realm. That small morning meeting has now grown into a powerful global gender and disaster network. That is how we uplift one another. Number 3, be honest and courageous. To do this work, we have to be honest, not just about how we are doing as a community, but also about how we got into this mess, into this disaster loss spiral that we are trapped in. This isn't just about vulnerable people. As Kim Mosby of the Institute of Women and Ethnic Studies reminds us, this is about structures and systems that were intentional about creating the unequal effects that actively render Black, Indigenous, and other persons of color, as well as women and others at the margins, vulnerable. Chauncey Willis, in her opening keynote, put it flatly: disasters bring to light a harsh truth that marginalized groups are acceptable losses. To speak these truths takes courage, And as Chauncia also reminded us, speaking truth to power can come with dire personal and professional consequences. But these times we are in, they demand exactly this kind of courage. And as Monique Harden just reminded us, courage is the opposite of cowardice. Number 4, change. Juliana Valenzuela, a recent graduate of the Colorado School of Mines, said that, quote, "If what we envision is not possible today in our current system, then we need to change that system." I know that can feel easier said than done, but as Raj Pandya of the Thriving Earth Exchange reminded us, we are the systems and institutions, and that means we can change them. Right now, federal agencies in the US are putting their programs and policies through an equity audit. This is not happening by chance. That is happening by design, by order, by leadership. And these audits are now being influenced by research in this community that has for decades pointed to inequitable, unjust, and unacceptable post-disaster outcomes that leave the most vulnerable even further behind. We are the system and we can change the system. Number 5, grow. If we are going to not just survive this century, if we are going to have the opportunity to thrive, we are going to have to grow the hazards and disaster workforce. Our conversations this week made clear that there are simply not enough of us to mount a defense against the existential crises that we currently face, let alone to mount an offense. Lakeisha Woods from the National Institute of Building Sciences argued that we need to grow the workforce through cultivating an entirely new generation of leaders, and in particular through focusing on women and people of color and others who have been absent at the highest levels in our organizations for far too long. As Lakeisha argued, this kind of shift in diversity in leadership can help change everything. Why does diversity in leadership, as well as in our workplaces and in our communities, matter so much? Because as Kimberly Mills from the US Virgin Islands underscored, the thing about diversity is that when it's present, everyone benefits. And when it is missing, everyone suffers. We need a larger, more demographically and functionally diverse workforce. That much is clear. But we also need to continue to build our coalitions with other groups that may not be working directly in the hazard space, but are working on the root causes that turn natural hazards into disasters. As we just heard in the last plenary session, this means that the hazards and disaster community will need to work with more with environmental justice, human rights, and civil rights organizations. And as Thea Nance just called for, we need to make sure that those collaborations are supported and that community workers are paid for that labor. And that's going to mean that our funding structures are going to need to change from the highest levels. This isn't going to just take more of us, though. It's going to take all of us. And as Hari Kumar from Delhi shared with us yesterday, mitigation is the best work. It may not get the funding or attention that it deserves, but let us keep our shoulders to the wind. As you go forth with this work, please remember to take care of yourself and others. And with that, I declare your 46th annual Natural Hazards Workshop adjourned. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. And we sure hope we're going to be with you again in Colorado next year. We miss you more than we can say. Thank you.